picture this. A woman storms into court demanding thousands of dollars because she was supposedly illegally evicted. Sounds reasonable, right? Well, hold on tight, because this story is about to take you on the wildest courtroom ride you've ever experienced. What started as a simple landlord-tenant relationship turned into a catastrophic disaster involving a pig, yes, an actual person nicknamed the pig, a cat, beer cans scattered everywhere, and one of the most audacious lawsuits you'll ever hear about. Let me paint you a picture of how this all began. Sarah Peterson had been living the dream for 5 solid years. She and her 2 roommates had been renting a beautiful townhouse from their landlord, Miss Sahagan. And get this, they were model tenants. They paid their rent on time, every single month. They kept the place in pristine condition. Miss Sahagan was a stellar landlord, and everyone was happy. It was the kind of rental situation people write positive reviews about online. Think about it. 5 years, that's 60 months of peaceful coexistence. No drama, no late-night calls about broken pipes, no complaints about wild parties. Just 3 responsible adults paying rent and living their lives while Ms. Sahagan collected her checks and maintained her property. It was textbook perfect. But here's the thing about perfect situations, they never last forever. One day, Ms. Sahagan made a decision that was completely within her rights as a property owner. She decided to sell the townhouse. Maybe she needed the money. Maybe she wanted to invest elsewhere. Maybe she was just ready for a change. The reason doesn't really matter, because here's the truth, it was her property, and she could do whatever she wanted with it. So she did what any responsible landlord would do. She informed all 3 tenants that she planned to sell the property. She explained that she needed to fix it up, stage it beautifully, and get it ready for potential buyers. This meant the tenants would need to find new places to live. Now, here's where things get interesting. Sarah's 2 roommates. They handled this news like mature adults. They understood the situation, they didn't complain, and they started apartment hunting. Within a reasonable amount of time, they found new places, packed up their belongings, and moved out. Clean, simple, drama-free. But Sarah had different plans. Sarah approached Ms. Sahagan with a proposal. She didn't want to leave. She begged, though she'd later deny using that exact word, to stay in the townhouse even after her roommates moved out. "Let me stay," she pleaded. "I'll keep everything perfect. I'm barely here anyway. When realtors come to show the property, it'll look amazing because I'll make sure my room stays neat and everything else will be staged beautifully. You can sell the house without any problems." Now, Miss Sahagan could have said no. She could have stuck to her original plan and required all 3 tenants to leave. But instead she made a decision that would come back to haunt her. She decided to be nice. She agreed to let Sarah stay. After all, Sarah had been a good tenant for 5 years. She had a proven track record. The place had always been well maintained when she lived there with her roommates. What could possibly go wrong? Miss Sahagan went ahead with her plan. She staged the townhouse beautifully. Everything was coordinated. The colors matched perfectly. Nice artwork hung on the walls. Decorative touches everywhere. The place looked like something out of a home design magazine, ready to impress potential buyers and their realtors. Then came July 9th, 2014. That's the day Sarah left town. She would later claim it was for a family emergency, though the specifics of this emergency were conveniently vague and constantly shifting. Was it really an emergency? Was it planned business? Nobody knows for sure, and honestly it doesn't matter. What matters is this. Sarah left, and she didn't just leave for a weekend or even a week. She left for nearly 2 months, from July 9th all the way until August 26th. Now remember, Sarah didn't have any pets. This had been clearly established during her 5-year tenancy. No dogs, no cats, no hamsters, not even a goldfish. The lease she'd signed specifically outlined who could live in the property: Sarah and her 2 roommates. That was it. No additional occupants, no pets, nothing else. But Sarah had a plan. A terrible, horrible, no-good plan that would blow up in spectacular fashion while Sarah was away. She moved someone into the townhouse. Let's call him the pig, not because of his appearance, but because of what happened next. And this pig, he came with a cat. Stop and think about this for a second. Sarah was allowed to stay in this property as a special favor. The agreement was simple. She would keep the place immaculate so it could be shown to potential buyers. The townhouse had been professionally staged and was supposed to look picture perfect at all times. And what did Sarah do? She moved in a complete stranger, someone Miss Sahagan had never met, never vetted, and never agreed to have in her property. A person with zero history of being a responsible tenant. A person who brought a cat into a no-pet property. Did Sarah ask Ms. Sahagan for permission? Absolutely not. Did she even mention it? Nope, she just did it, assuming she could get away with it. The pig didn't pay any rent. He wasn't on any lease. He had made no agreements with Ms. Sahagan about keeping the property in good condition. When Sarah was later confronted about this, she tried to claim he was house-sitting. House-sitting for what, exactly? Sarah didn't have any pets that needed care. She didn't have plants that needed watering. She claimed she needed someone to watch over her personal possessions. But here's the kicker: if she was really that concerned about her stuff, she could have put it in storage for 2 months. Problem solved. No, this wasn't house-sitting. This was Sarah letting someone squat in a property she didn't own. during a time when that property needed to be shown to potential buyers without the owner's knowledge or consent. Imagine you're a realtor. You've got a hot property to show, a beautifully staged townhouse that looks magazine ready. You're bringing potential buyers who are genuinely interested. You unlock the door, step inside, ready to showcase this gem, and then horror: beer cans scattered around, kitty litter boxes visible, stuff everywhere, the carefully curated staging completely destroyed. The place looks like a frat house after a party, not like a home that's on the market for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's exactly what happened. A realtor showed up with potential buyers and found the townhouse in absolute chaos. Miss Sahagan was mortified. After all her effort to stage the property, after extending special kindness to Sarah, after trying to do the right thing, this was her reward. The professionally staged living room, ruined, the coordinated decor, obscured by random personal items and trash, the whole carefully constructed illusion of a perfect home, shattered. When Miss Sahagan confronted the situation, Sarah's response was to deny, deflect, and make excuses. She claimed the mess had been staged by Ms. Sahagan herself to make Sarah look bad. Yes, you read that right. Sarah actually tried to argue that the landlord had deliberately trashed her own property just to frame the tenant. Those pictures were staged, Sarah protested. The trash scattered around that was set up to make me look bad. But wait, what about the kitty litter? That's pretty hard to fake. Well, not the kitty litter, Sarah admitted, but everything else. The logic didn't hold up under even the slightest scrutiny. Why would Miss Sahagan sabotage her own property sale? Why would she damage her own staging? It made absolutely no sense. Here's where this story reaches its peak of absurdity. After all of this, after being allowed to stay as a special favor, after moving in an unauthorized occupant with a pet, after the property was found in terrible condition, after Miss Sahagan had every right to be furious, Sarah decided to sue. She filed a lawsuit claiming she had been illegally evicted. She wanted her security deposit back, plus damages. In her mind, she was the victim in this situation. Miss Sahagan, the landlord who had been nothing but kind and accommodating, was somehow the bad guy. Sarah's reasoning: she pulled out her lease and pointed to a clause that mentioned transient friends and relatives could stay temporarily. In her interpretation, this meant she could move anyone she wanted into the property for as long as she wanted, regardless of the circumstances. But that's not what transient means. It doesn't mean long-term unauthorized occupant who takes over the property while you're gone for 2 months. It means temporary visitors, people who stay for a few days, not people who move in with their pets and trash the place. The facts were crystal clear. Sarah had stayed in the property through July, paying rent, but then she left in July, and her stuff remained there through August without her paying rent for that month. She wasn't even living there. Yet she expected to get her security deposit back. Let's break down what really happened. Miss Sahagan had been generous. She had a tenant with a solid 5-year history, and when that tenant asked for a favor, she granted it. The only condition was that the property needed to stay in showing condition. Sarah violated that agreement in the worst possible way. She didn't just fail to keep her room neat, she moved in a whole other person without permission. She introduced a pet to a no-pet property. She allowed the staged home to become a disaster zone, and then, after all that, she had the audacity to demand money. Sarah kept insisting she had received no notice to vacate, but he